Good morning and good evening, everyone. So this is our October instance of the monthly OpenLineage meeting. The calls are recorded, and I post the link after the meeting on the OpenLineage Wiki on the LFA and Data Foundation website. So you'll have the link to the recording along with the notes, and you're welcome to comment on the notes as well if there's something missing. I try to have good notes, but it's always an improvable process. So for today, I'll keep track of, so we have Michael. Oh, actually, let's do the quick round of introduction. So Mike, you can go on.
Mike, I'm a software engineer at Datakin.
On my screen, I'm next. I'm Julian. I'm the lead for OpenLineage and also at Datakin. Mathieu.
Hey, I work for Getting Data, and yeah, I'm OpenLineage committer. I think that's the name.
Yep. Ross.
I am VP Marketing for Datakin, and I'm here today to talk about the OpenLineage website.
Minkyu.
Yeah, I'm Minkyu, and I'm a software engineer at Datakin, and I'm just trying to find a way to contribute the OpenLineage. Yeah.
Peter.
I'm Peter. I'm a software engineer at Datakin. I work with Marquez quite a bit in OpenLineage events.
Willie.
Hi, I'm Willie. I'm a TSC member and creator of Marquez, and also TSC member of OpenLineage, and work with the Datakin guys.
And Mandy.
Hi, everybody. I'm the lead for Algeria. I'm obviously also working on OpenLineage. And I am recently retired from IBM. So I retired last Tuesday. And I'm still in shock, but hopefully, well, my plan is to keep working on open source, including OpenLineage, but it is quite a big change for me.
Great. And congratulations again, Mandy. And
thank you. Everybody congratulates me. It's obviously amazing. You know, it's a great, you know, it's a lucky transition.
So for this slide, it's just remember so that people have access of all the ways to communicate with the community. So there's a link to the Slack, to the LFA and data mailing list, and the Confluence Wiki where this meeting is archived. Well, for the agenda today, and we can add a bit to it. So that's what I prepared. I don't think I didn't get more input from the community this time for adding things, but if something comes up, feel free to add it up. So Ross has been working quite a bit on improving the OpenLineage website and has been a major contributor in this area. So he'll present us a quick update on what that looks like. There's just a quick update on the latest release, OpenLineage 023, which was for accommodate for a DBT change. And really, that's all there is to it. We haven't released yet 030, but it's coming soon, and that's a next release. So it includes the versioning of facets independently in the spec, the Airflow 2 support and the Spark 3 support, which are in progress. I put an update on the proxy backend for the next release. So the current plan is this would come in the following release of OpenLineage, and Mandy can give us a quick update about this. And then there was a quick mention for open discussion. I don't know if you've seen the activity in the OpenLineage Slack channel, but the Azure Purview team, who's there, it's the metadata product from the Microsoft Azure cloud solutions. They're doing a hackathon for consuming OpenLineage, and they're very interested about it. And so I figured I'd mention it here. And on that, yes. Oh, so sorry, before I jump into it, is there anything else you wanted to discuss today? I think one other point that came up in discussions recently is, so we have this proposal mechanism in tickets for discussing kind of design of new addition either to the spec or to the integrations and so on. And one discussion we might start is the discussion about having design documents in the, like other projects do RFCs, is like a folder with a design doc in Markdown in the repo, which makes it a little bit easier to iterate and comment on some of those designs. So that's something I'm adding to the open discussion if we want to start thinking about it, and that could be a proposal to you know, iterate on the proposal process. Anything else? Okay. And so on that, I'll let Ross. Ross, do you want me to release the screen and show things around?
Yeah, sure.
Let's do that.
All right, so this is a pretty new website. So what I'd like to do today is just kind of walk everybody through what exists there, talk a bit about what I hope to add in the future, and then make sure I point out all the opportunities for people in the community to contribute content to the website. So it's a really very basic website. The front page has a very high level architecture diagram and then a list of blog posts. There's a getting started page, which the purpose is to get somebody up and running with Marquez quickly and start to articulate the OpenLineage API. There's a section for all of the different integrations that have been built between OpenLineage and various data processing and transformation tools and platforms. And I'm not sure if I like the rendering as a table, but it's pretty clear for now. It might not scale when we get a lot more integrations, but for now it shows the different data sources that are available through each integration and links off to some resources, the sort of docs page for each one, plus the GitHub repo and the blog. And then of course there's a blog, which we've been kind of busy trying to fill, but there's definitely opportunity for people to contribute blog posts here as well. If you're working on a project to do with OpenLineage, or if you are deploying OpenLineage or playing with it, there's opportunity for blog posts here. And finally, one last thing I'll show is the resources page, which right now is looking very, very sparse. And I will invite anybody who has content for this page to contribute it here as well. So talking really quickly about the contribution process, this is a Gatsby site. And so all the content is written in Markdown. If you look at the OpenLineage organization, there's a repo called website. And in that repo, oh, sorry, not in source, under contents, there's a whole bunch of directories that just contain Markdown. And so if, for example, somebody wanted to write a new blog post, they could copy one of these directories over and start to write it in Markdown. So this is what the DBT blog post looks like in Markdown. Similarly, for the resources page, under content, base pages, resources, it's just Markdown here. So I invite anybody who has additional resources, documentation, conference talks or sessions, blog posts, updates to integrations, like for example, when Airflow Airflow 2 and Spark 3 come out, we'll need to update here. So I invite folks to contribute. And if you want something changed and you don't feel like learning how Gatsby works, feel free to file an issue in that GitHub repo and I'll pick it up. Any questions about the website or how it was built or anything like that? Happy to answer any questions.
Nice. So so it's kind of, I know the answer, but like it's kind of I think it's interesting question is, so is this automated yet? And like, what's the process? How does the Gatsby get updated into the official published website?
Right. The answer is right now I do it. So there are two repos in OpenLineage. One of them is website. This is where the Gatsby source lives. And then this is where the Gatsby builds go. And so I clone the website repo, I run Gatsby build, I take the output of the public directory, I copy it to this repo, and I do a push, and then it automatically builds the website. It would be really cool at some point to have CI built so that when a commit gets merged into the source repository, it'll automatically deploy a new version of the site, but that's not something I've figured out how to do yet.
Yeah, that makes
do you
sense.
run that?
Go ahead,
Sorry.
Mandy, sorry.
I was just going to say, do you run it every time you get a pull request, or do you have I do it every week, or what's your plan?
I would like it so that it happens on pull request, because I think that's a really good mechanism. And then, like, for example, a new blog could come in as a pull request, and when it gets closed, I think it'd be really cool if that automatically published the site. I don't see a reason to do it on a regular basis, like every week, and I think it can be done based on the change. But we may get to the point where there are changes coming in too frequently. We need to do some kind of some sort of batch approach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, recently Maciej automated the publication of the spec. If you go on openlineage.io/spec on the website, I guess I don't think actually the folder doesn't list.
I think it's not merged yet, but
oh yeah, the automation is not merged yet, but we publish. Okay, so this is work in progress, but I publish manually. Same thing for now. I've been publishing the spec manually, and so there's a PR in progress that Maciej contributed that will automate this process, and a very similar process would work for the Gatsby website, I think.
Okay. Well, I will go learn from what you've done, Maciej.
I guess it's kind of simpler because you don't have to detect changes on spec. You just have to run it all on any pull request to the main, right? On any merge to main.
Yeah.
So I guess the same thing would work. Yes.
Cool. Well, I'll take a look.
Yes, and so Mandy, if you have an idea for a blog post, something like that, this is very welcome, and yes, please.
And I'm happy to write them with you if you'd like. If you want some help. Anyway, I'm here as a resource to the community to help get this stuff published if we need the help.
Yeah, and I'll also comment on, like, the getting started uses Marquez, but it doesn't have to. So if there's Mandy, if you wanted to contribute also Egeria and how to get started with your project, that'd be amazing too. It was just implementation we had up and running.
No, it makes sense to have something real to show people. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay, thank you.
Oh, there's one other thing.
Sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. Well, one other thing I wanted to mention. I'm planning to build a supporters page at some point that just says, has a list of here are the contributors and supporting organizations and implementing projects and products and things like that. So I'm beginning to think about what that might look like. If anyone has any opinions about what that might look like, feel free to share them with me on Slack.
Mm-hmm. So one thing is to say, if you're interested in joining, this is what you do. That's always useful to encourage more people.
Yes. Yeah, we don't have a lot of language. There's not a lot of language here about joining the project. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say that it's also about showing that it is open governed, rather than sort of controlled by a single company. So since this does have that, it's really worth celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
You can get the Linux Foundation. They have a top banner that you can have for the website. I don't know how you make it work because they put it on our website, but it is quite nice to have that to say that it's part of that family.
That's a good idea. I'll look into that.
We've just switched to MK docs. So we're using, and that's producing a very nice, because our problem is volume of documentation. So it's giving us search and multiple menus and different ways of navigating into the content. I think this is nice because it's very simple and you've got everything just at your fingertips. I just mentioned it as an alternative, but as I say, I think what you've done is really nice.
Yeah, thank you. I think we may end up having a separate need for a doc site at some point where it's got sort of an IA and searchability and kind of all of that stuff like Docusaurus or MK Docs or Hugo or something like that. We may have a need for that at some point, or we may expand this into being a doc site as well. I guess we could go either direction.
Yeah, but anyhow.
Cool. Well, I'll stop sharing now.
Nice. Thank you for the update. I think this is, and thank you for the comments on this. I think this is great to share information on how OpenLineage works and the project as well. So the next item was the upcoming release 030. So on that, on the facet versioning, so what I was mentioning before is, I think last time we showed the ticket, but now it's been merged. So now when you look at the spec, you have the core spec, which is just the run events and the core entities. So you have a run event, which has a type, a time, and the run ID, the job ID, the inputs and outputs, and all those things can have facets. And so it's just a list of facets, and the core spec doesn't define any of the facets, right? It's just as additional properties, which are facet type. And then when you go in the facets folder, you have each of the facet defined independently. And as part of that, so if I take for example, the schema facet, this one, it has its own versioning. So each facet will be versioned independently. So the core spec, in the creation of the first one and until it split, so it iterated twice. So the current version is 1.02 for the core spec. And so we see this as this version will change very slowly and each of the facets will be versioned independently instead of versioning everything together. And so for the schema facet, it's simply, there's fields, a field which is an array and contain a list of definition of the field with a name, a type, and a description. And so this is the core thing. And when they get published to this version, so each version gets published to this URL. So you can go see this particular URL and find it, right? So each of those facets is published to a URL. So this is the standard JSON schema mechanism, like, the schema of the schema is here. So this is the same mechanism, except, so on the JSON schema website, it just downloads it. It doesn't present it as text. The content type is different, but otherwise it's the same mechanism where you can download the JSON schema, and this is the ID for this schema. And so one of the interesting aspects of this is that it covers all the custom facet that other project might define. Will all look exactly the same. They just be hosted in a different website than the OpenLineage.io. So
that's really nice.
Yeah.
So are the beans, the Java beans? We had a Java client for the original schema. Are the beans for each facet included in the same Maven project, or do you have a different Maven project for them?
Yes. So there's a client, a Java client that generates clients from this. And actually, I'm not, sorry, I haven't prepared for that, but so it generates two sets of sources. So I don't have, so it generates sources, so I cannot show you them here strictly, but let me go to the pull request. So it generates two sets of classes. One is oriented toward the client. So basically, it generates something for the core spec plus all the facets, and all the facets are also added. It merges all the facets in the core spec together. So from the client perspective, it's really easy to add a facet, right? All the core facets are defined in the Java classes that are generated. And it generates also a server side, which is designed more for deserializing, and generates only the core facet, the core spec. And then each of the facet is seen as a custom facet, and will show as a regular JSON node object from Jackson, which lets you deserialize the core spec without having to worry about the version of the individual facet, like whether they're custom facet or they're a different version of the spec. It doesn't matter. You can treat them independently, and you can use, if you want to deserialize a specific facet, you can use the model that's provided. Let me actually, I might have this in my Eclipse right now. It's just been, I am not prepared, but I can, let me just quick look a quick minute if I can show what this looks like. On the, actually, if I look at the close pull request, I put an example of what the server model look like. Here we go. So this is an example of the generated code from the server side. Right. So this is what a run event looks like. So you can deserialize a run event, and then when we look at a specific, you know, when you have facets in a run, this is a run facet object, and run facet is a simple generic object where all the additional properties are going to be JSON node at this point. And so you can, you know, generically consume any of those, and you can, so you can optionally deserialize that with the other objects that are generated from all the facets.
From the client objects, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So we added the separate server side model to deserialize the core event without treating each facet more generically.
So that means the consumer can just choose to skip anything it doesn't recognize.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or just store the facet as is, right? It's just going to serialize, you know, it's going to be bidirectional. You can deserialize it as an object with a more generic representation rather than the type bean. And then
yeah, and in Marquez, that was actually pretty important because we initially wrote our own models for OpenLineage. So the server model discussion kind of came about in the PR open, so that way Marquez can just consume events and not really be tied to releases of OpenLineage.
Yeah, I'm just what my questions are around what we do in the proxy backend in terms of, do we just do no processing of it at all and just push it straight through to Kafka and then let the Kafka consumer care about it? That sounds like that's the right move for this.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what the proxy backend should do. It should just like push it straight. But then if you're consuming facet from Egeria, you know, you might take
then I'm going to have to process them. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
So this kind of the idea here. And actually, yes, I do have So I can show you quickly in Eclipse what that looks like instead. So the generated code, so you have a client model. So there are two packages, which this one is more designed for the client. And if we look at the tests, you know, where we shown this before, when you have more of a builder model, you can create new facets, and then you can create a new run event, pass the type, the time, the run, job, inputs, outputs information that you can create using builders or factory methods. And the server side is, so that's what the client has, and it has all those methods to create all the beans relatively easily. And so that's more from an integration perspective. And from the server, deserialization, it's more about deserializing the core model and get access. So you see, you have the lineage event as the root of this event, and run event, sorry, not lineage event, it's called run event as a root, which contains a run, a job, input, output, right? So this is generated from the spec. And then for each of those, the facets are treated as a generic object that contains all its, you know, you can see the producer, the schema, and all additional properties separate. So this is reflecting only the core of the spec. And that's it. So
thank you.
And on the Spark improvement, so this is mainly making sure the Spark integration works with the new changes. So there's nothing really specific. It's more about making sure we support all the things that have changed between Spark 2.4 and 3x branches. And the Airflow 2.0 support is more interesting. Maciej, do you want to give a quick update of what's the main difference? Sorry, I kind of didn't warn you ahead of time, but if you want, give a quick update.
Yeah, sure. So Airflow, between Airflow 1 and Airflow 2, mechanism on which we depended in previous Airflow version was changed, and we don't get notified of Airflow DAG completion like before. So we use another mechanism, which is called Lineage backend, which sounds more specialized for our use case. And basically, from user perspective, there are two major changes. First is that the mechanism on which you have to use to integrate is different. You have to specify in your config on or environment variable that you're using OpenLineage backend. And the second one is the reason why it's still regarded as experimental, because the Lineage backend gets only notified when your task instance gets completed. So we are not sending endless start events on DAG run start, but only if we complete them. And similarly, we don't send failed events for the failed tasks because we don't get notified by Airflow them. So what we're trying to do is to work with Airflow maintainers to implement something that will give us a possibility to get notified earlier, and then the mechanism will be, I guess, complete or superior to the DAG-based approach in Airflow 1.
Yeah, and it's going to be really nice to not have, this makes really the Airflow integration orthogonal, and people don't have to modify their jobs anymore with this.
Yes, that's a nice advantage.
Yes.
instead of modifying every DAG, you have to just put this in environment once.
Any question on this on this, and otherwise we'll get to the next step, which was talking about the 0.4 scope. I think that's it. So Mandy, I know you've been busy. Did you want to give a quick update, I think, on the proxy backend?
Yes, there's not, there's not very much to say. I've been playing with the formats, looking at what's there, looking at mapping to Ageria events. I've taken the Ageria community through the proposals, both of the proxy backend and the updates to Ageria, and they're all happy. And we have a webinar on this on the, I think it's like the 8th of November. So that's my, that's the date that it has to be working. So that's roughly where it is. And Willie has done me a base module, I think, for the proxy backend. So that's given me a massively a great head start. That's roughly where we are. So when is 0.4? When do you need this in place for your deadline?
So I think we don't have a deadline yet for this one, so we can align. It sounds like we could align. I mean, 0.3, we're going to do it soon because like so that the Airflow 2.0 stuff is released and people can try it. And as same thing for some of the Spark 3. I think we're shooting roughly for a monthly release, but you know, depending on how fast the things that are in the scope evolve, we try to descope things if it looks like it's going to take too long, so that we can do releases more often. But we can adjust this for the proxy backend first release, right?
Yeah, I mean, that works well because Ageria also does monthly releases, and we find we need to do that because of our dependencies. It just means we can keep everything moving forward. So I think that works well. Okay.
So yeah, if you mention your deadline is kind of 8th of November, we can do a release around that timeline if that works, right? We can start. So we use the projects in GitHub to manage those release here. So you see, so the 0.2.3, well, so this needs to be closed, but this was just a patch level to adjust for the DBT support. 0.3.0 is ongoing. It has Airflow to support, Spark 3, mainly things, a few other things that are in progress. We also pull in some bug fixes or other contribution from the community as they come in. And I have not moved this yet, but so basically we move this to, actually we can probably close this one and create a new ticket for the evolution. So that's where, let's spend a little bit of time of how we want to capture those designs. Like this could go in a markdown file instead. And you could see that way we can say, hey, this is what we decided to do. And even if it's a markdown file, you can still iterate and modify it afterwards, right? Yeah. If things change. And so I think we could consider maybe adding this in a markdown file for this project, depending on our discussion on this. And then we'll adjust the scope. I think there's still a few things like we have to consider, maybe if some of those things move to the next iteration, and close this and make a release. And then on the scope of 0.4, we haven't, so right now there's a few bugs that have been pushed to it. There have been some discussion, so we could, we need to kind of clean that, make sure this corresponds to the scope we want, and the proxy backend would be part of it for the next iteration. So this is,
So we use a new issue basically for the implementations, use the current one for the documentation, and then
I would think so, yes.
yeah, okay, no, I like it.
That makes sense. So that's it on this one. On the roadmap discussion, so there's a ticket. So reminder from the last meeting, Ryan had presented some of the ease requirements from the iceberg perspective. And so we need to, there's a ticket, let me pull this, where, sorry. So I have to move your faces around so I can see you and the screen at the same time. Right, so so we had a ticket to, it's kind of like next level of the client discussion we've been having, especially in the Spark context, right? How do we enable data sources or libraries to add facet like dataset facet to in some context so that they can be sent along? And so Ryan put all the details of metadata that Iceberg knows about and would like to capture and put in those events. So this is captured here. For now, it's in the OpenLineage roadmap project as a future discussion, but it would be nice to make some progress on this and have a beginning. So probably have a beginning of a design what this API would look like. So just wanted to mention that Ryan was not able to meet today. But if you have opinions about this, please chime in this ticket. And yes, and this is just a link to remind people that this is where the prioritization happens. So you have the things that are considered probably to go in the next iteration of the project. So all of those are candidates to go in the 0.4 release, and the rest is kind of for later. And this is a level of granularity of prioritization we're doing at the moment. And for the open discussion, so actually, yeah, so we had two things so far. One is for the open discussion part of the meeting. One, I just wanted to mention, and I asked that team and they said, yes, they'd be happy that people know they're kind of hacking on this. So the Purview is this metadata system part of the Azure cloud for collecting, it connects Lineage and catalogs, dataset, and all of that. And so during their hackathon this week, you've seen a lot of questions on the OpenLineage Slack channel. And they're looking into consuming OpenLineage event, in particular coming from Spark, the Spark integration. And they were interested in contributing to it as well. So that's for this. So it's mainly just a mention of it. But if you have any questions, that's it. And the other point we discussed was for the proposal process, to have a way to publish those as design document. I think so far we were using just the issue description to describe what the scope, what the requirement, the use case, kind of the why and the how of adding either facet to the spec or other things. But through discussion, we were considering it would make sense to add those as design doc, as proposal in a proposal folder in the OpenLineage repository. And like other projects in the LFAI and data have RFCs or things like that. So for example, if you look at Amundsen, who's part of the LFAI and data, we have an RFCs folder where you open a ticket and then you kind of start open a PR that creates a new markdown document for designing stuff. And so this is one example. And I was curious to hear what people think of how we could do this.
I think the first thing to specify would be that those should be for like spec and for bigger features, I guess, not that can significantly modify some parts of how it works, because this is similar to what people do in like Kafka, Flink, many other projects, right? Where if you have a bug, you can fix it. If you have a significant change, let's discuss it this way, right?
Yes, this is not for bug reports of like, bug fixes are, I think issues are great. This is a great point. Yes.
Yeah, and I would also make it clear via like a template, like what we're looking for and what it means to get a proposal approved. I think it'd be good to define that process. And I think if you have like a proposal directory, it makes it very clear what we're working towards. So I think now things are stuck in issues and there's like long threads, but it'd be great to just have it organized and know what's on the roadmap or what's coming.
Any other opinions? So far I'm writing down like proposals directory with document in Markdown for new features, like for example, the design for the proxy backend would go in this, or change to the spec. So I think there's a couple of issues that are about adding facets to the spec. So that would go in there. It's not for bug fixes.
So the way we want to discuss is when someone proposes something, then create a PR with a proposal under the proposal directory and discuss over the PR comments. And when it gets approved and merged, that means that proposal is reviewed and ready for development.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
I think that would be the process. Right now, I think we kind of mix both, right? Because we open an issue to describe what should be done, we iterate on that, and so that issue is in progress. And at some point, it gets into development mode, and the same ticket is tracked to implementing it. So it's kind of blurs the line. There's no clear kind of, we agreed that this is what we wanted to do, right? And so it's kind of a bit in between. I think from the community perspective, it's better to formalize this process. Go ahead.
What if someone puts a proposal in and it's rejected? Does the document go into the proposals folder with that status so that people can see that that has been discussed in the past, or is it only accepted changes that go in here?
I think it would be accepted changes. I mean, if this goes through a PR, the pull request will keep track of, you'll be able to see the discussion and how people got there or not. So I would think so. That being said, I can see how it would happen that we accept something, and between the time we thought it was a good idea and we get to implement it, we may decide not to do it anymore, right? So we should probably have a way to capture this.
Oh, got it.
What do you think, Mandy, from that perspective, is a good approach?
I think you do have the GitHub discussions to do that. So I think it's nice to have a list of these the things that have gone in. The question is whether you want to be updating it to say this actually was proposed in version 0.3 and actually was implemented in 0.5, so people know where they're looking for it, or how long something's been in. It's just really that the traceability from the issues and the pull requests to the documents, because you do have to then tie that to your implementation.
Yeah, I think it would probably be a good idea. Go ahead, Mike.
I did do a little bit of digging yesterday into GitHub Wikis. It does look like there's a way to open pull requests against the wiki pages. So they are just markdown pages. So one option would be just to have like a proposals wiki and then you can open a subfolder with the actual proposals content and have a table that links to open proposals. And in that way, we actually have the option of keeping track of the status of the various proposals. We could say, you know, they're under review, they've been accepted, they've been rejected.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that to have something that lists what are the things that are accepted but not implemented yet. And for each thing that is implemented, you know, what version it went in. And it's probably a field in the proposal itself. I think I see people, you can have a table at the top, right? That formalizes some of that metadata. You know, I think we should have a template and keep track of when it was done, what version it went in, and if it's removed at some point, you know, what version it was removed in, or probably because like the typical thing that happens is those things kind of get out of date. So maybe keeping track of information in it of if things change afterwards, like probably linking to the newer spec that's kind of changed things would be a good idea.
Yeah.
But typically those are kind of point in time design, right? They don't substitute to documentation. They capture something that we want to do at some point in time.
I think it'd be very nice if we have a mechanism to kind of people come and vote for the prioritization. So proposal is, so someone propose and review it and accept it. And between the list of accepted proposal, so kind of prioritization is another thing. And kind of as a visitor of the GitHub, then kind of I see the list of accepted proposal, but I have no idea which one is going to be next implemented. And kind of it'd be very nice if I have a way to just go to, oh, I really like this proposal and want to prioritize this, and kind of just giving a +1 for this proposal.
Mm-hmm. So I think, I wonder, so we've been using, yes, those kind of +1 emojis on some of this.
Yeah, on the issue. But if it becomes a PR and merge it into the main, then I only see the merged, the markdown documents in the merged repository. And yeah, I have an idea how to +1 for particular proposal. Yeah,
I think, yeah. So what I've seen, for example, in the Amundsen project, they link back to the issue for that starts before writing a document, right? You start by opening a GitHub issue that, you know, says, hey, I think we should do something like that, and then you write the document if like it sounds like this is a good idea from the community. And I think maybe, yeah, linking back to the issue is a good way to track that. The mechanism for +1ing something should be fairly easy, right? I think. An example is like, I think people were, yeah, so kind of. We can formalize and then like in the issue template to have instruction for people.
Yeah.
Hey, hit the +1 emoji if you want to show your support for something.
Yeah.
To help prioritize. Yes.
So that would suggest that every proposal should have an issue opened prior to the proposal, and maybe
Yes.
have the wiki proposal page link back to the original issue so that users can find it. You will probably include that in the template.
Yes. That sounds like a good idea to me.
So one thing this gives us is a starter for the blog as well.
Sorry, it's
It
I
can
didn't
give you-
follow.
Yeah, it gives you a starter text for the blog for the new feature for the website.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah, includes the part of the definition of done of the new feature is a blog post about it.
Well,
makes
it is
sense.
nice. I mean, it is an opportunity when something goes on in to you know, to celebrate it.
So I think for that, I can start like materializing this process by following the process to describe how to do the proposal process. And we can write it down as a doc like this. And so that's a good way to practice it at the same time of finalizing it. So I can try that. I can take this action. And so we can follow this discussion on an issue that we'll describe. So I took notes of what we just discussed. And we can have a PR that proposes how to put that in place.
We can test it when I try and follow the instructions for the proxy backend.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so that way, yeah, and we can iterate on this, right? It's kind of, I think as part of this, you would want to make tweaks to the process as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think any last thoughts? We have 4 more minutes. So I think there was a great discussion on design that.
So just to let people know that the LFAI and data has a new committee, which is going to discuss data ops. And I'm speaking on the first call tomorrow. I'm speaking on it about Ageria, but I will also talk about OpenLineage, because I think if these data ops pipelines can produce lineage, that will be OpenLineage will be really useful. So.
And can you, what's the, I've seen the updates for that committee on data ops, and what's the scope and the context of this?
I think it's still a little bit loose, but it's really about how the foundation projects should integrate or work together around this topic. So I think it's all to play for at the moment, but I think trying to establish OpenLineage is the way that the pipelines describe their behavior, what they've done, and it's got all the right facets, things like the data, you know, the pipeline's going to be picking sources, extracting them, validating them, and pushing them to new places. So describing that with OpenLineage seems completely, you know, sort of no-brainer, really. And then Ageria is there to give a broader perspective that help drive the pipelines. So, you know, so how is it tagged and all those sorts of things. So the pipelines can do and make better decisions, and in terms of the quality of the data and things.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping it will be about.
And for those interested, are the meeting details on the LFAI and data website or wiki?
Yeah, I'll post the link into the chat for this session so you can see it.
That'd be great.
Yeah, there's a mailing list for this committee, so I signed up for it. The first meeting is tomorrow morning at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time.
Time for me, but
yes.
Yeah.
So I think mainly matches something that's, you know, your time. For us, it's a bit early, so it depends how.
There we are.
Yeah, it's not. I think it's just slightly later than the TAC meeting. Cool. Well, thank you for this update. Thank you everyone for joining the meeting. And I'll be posting the recording and the notes on the wiki as usual. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.